Hi, this is Megan Solomon. I'm with Aura Identity Guard, and I'm joined today by Eva Velasquez, President and CEO of the Identity Theft Resource Center. Eva, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so glad to be here, Megan, and I'm glad we're covering these important topics. You know, there's so many things going on right now differently in the world regarding COVID. We've got a lot to cover. I know we want to talk about how to stay safe as a remote worker, what some of the hacks are that are really common right now, and how to avoid some phishing and just some simple things that both individuals and businesses can do to keep themselves safe.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I know that working from home and communicating, connecting with people online today has just become something that we're all dependent upon. It used to be that it was just the younger people or the millennials that really knew how to interact online. And now in this day and age, we're all having to figure out how to do that. So there's tons of us who have worked from home for a long time, but it seems like there are more people than ever these days working remotely.
You're right, Megan. There are so many newcomers into both the working remotely and connecting on their devices. So we've seen a big increase in a lot of seniors who are engaging with their families. They're not working, but they're engaging with their families, and they're using these new platforms and devices in ways that they haven't had to before. And that's creating some vulnerabilities. And then we've got a remote workforce that was stood up very, very quickly. So to your point, I too am very familiar with working remotely. I've been doing it for a number of years. Even though we have an office where we all come in, you know, a day or two here, I travel a lot. So I'm very used to the interface, what things look like and how the platforms operate. We now have this workforce of folks who maybe have never had to RDP in or use a VPN or get their voicemails from their desk phone forwarded to either their mobile device or into their email. So there's all of this unfamiliar process, and at the same time, the sense of urgency that we need to keep operations flowing, and it's creating some vulnerabilities.
So Eva, we were just talking about all these people that are working from home for the first time. You know, a remote workforce has grown exponentially in 2020. Can you tell us a little bit about what people should be on the lookout for? What are cyber criminals doing today to try to exploit remote workers?
Well, it really runs the gamut because right now there are so many opportunities. Again, phishing is just it was ubiquitous before, and it's ubiquitous now. They are exploiting the fact that we are using weak passwords across multiple platforms. They're definitely exploiting the fact that we may not have up-to-date antivirus and malware on all of our devices and machines. And for the remote workers in particular, if they have not protected their home network the same way that the office network has been protected, that's a big vulnerability, but really easy fixes.
Tell me a little bit about what people can do to fix that, and what are some of the best practices people can do to keep themselves and their company safe while they're working from home?
You know, far and away, it's going to be good password management and really making sure that you are not using the same password over multiple platforms, especially if it's a very simple password. So the mantra is strong and unique passwords. The reason that this is really important is because of the state of data breaches right now. And I know it's hard for people to understand how all of these things are connected and why does it matter if my Fitbit password and my Gmail password and all of these things are the same, and my work login credentials. So a company that has a data breach, maybe the data is viewed as, it's not really that sensitive and it's not that important. I mean, it's just how many times you went on a jog this week. And I can understand why people think that way. But the reality is the hackers know that you're using the same password over multiple accounts. And so they take that information that they got through a data breach, and they have an automated process where they just start hammering accounts trying to get in. So if you have used the same password for your work login credentials as you did for something you thought was pretty innocuous, but there was a breach there, you've just created a vulnerability and a pathway in to that entire work network, that company network.
One of the things that we've been talking about now are how tiny you can leave that door cracked, how small that opening can be for a cyber criminal to exploit that and to access information. What happens if a hacker is able to access information, but the person who has been compromised does not know that their information has been compromised? What can people do to make sure that you're aware of the theft as soon as it occurs?
You know, that's a really good question. And it's a challenge because generally speaking, the way people discover that their information has been compromised is because it's then been misused. Most people find out they're a victim of identity theft, not because they're checking their credit reports quarterly, proactively. I wish we got those kind of calls into the call center where it was, I was checking my credit report this quarter and I found some suspicious activity. That's not how it happens. They reach out to us and say, I was trying to rent an apartment. I was trying to pass a background check for a new job. I was applying for financial aid for college, and they find out that this roadblock has been put in front of them. So the best way to address that is really to try to minimize your risk of being compromised in the first place. And this is the responsibility of all stakeholders. There are things that individuals can do, but there are things that businesses need to do. The companies that actually collect and store and use our data. And then there are also things that government needs to do because they too collect and store our data. But as an individual consumer, a lot of those best practices that I already talked about, that good cyber hygiene, that is a great way to minimize your risk and make sure that you're at least reducing that risk surface for the hackers. Because to your point, it only takes that one tiny little vulnerability to, open up Pandora's box. One of the best ways to protect yourself or at least get a notice of detection on those things is to use two-factor authentication. So when you are tying your phone number, a device, into that authentication process, and I think we've all seen that with our bank especially. Oh, you're using a new device. We have to send, you're using a new computer, we have to send this to the known email or the known phone number associated with this account, and then you get that one-time use code. That is optional on a ton of platforms, but it's optional, it's not mandatory. So we are always telling people, please choose that option. Take advantage of the security and fraud and identity protections that all of these entities that you engage with offer. Again, they don't make them mandatory, but they exist, and use them. It's a great way, even if there is an infiltration, they crack that door open, it's a great way to stop them in their tracks because then you know what's going on and you can go in and change your password yourself and start taking the steps to stop them from getting any further.
What would you say to people who say, I just don't have time for all that? There's a lot of people these days that are trading their security for the convenience of doing everything online and saving their information online and all of those types of things. What kinds of ways can they take control over that and protect their information that won't take them, 7 hours out of every day?
I guarantee you that it takes a lot longer to remediate or fix an identity theft issue than it does to engage in those risk minimization techniques. I hear from victims all of the time that they are willing to jump through any hoops that are required so that they can just secure their identity and make sure the thief doesn't go in and infiltrate that again. We're not talking about needing to take a day off work to deploy all these things. For example, putting the alerts on your credit card or your bank account so that you can have an alert when there's a transaction on your card or from your account. That takes 5 seconds next time you're engaging in your online banking or through your app, and it just pops up on your phone. It literally takes 2 seconds to look at it and go, oh yeah, that was me. Oh yeah, that was me. Oh wait, that wasn't me. It really doesn't take that long, and I like us to continue to have the conversation and educate people that these steps aren't that hard, and a little bit goes a long way. It's layers. You just layer these things on top of each other, and then they're really meaningful.
Yeah, I can understand that, because recovering or restoring your identity after a theft, what is the latest statistic? I remember it was several hundred hours worth of effort to have to do that if you didn't have a proactive solution in place.
You know, it's wildly inconsistent because it really depends on the crime that's taken place. For things that have to do with existing accounts, like an existing credit card account, it actually doesn't take that long. We have a really good universal process in place. But for things like criminal identity theft, where your name is used during the commission of a crime, it can take years, because depending on the jurisdiction and what their requirements are that you prove it wasn't you, you may actually have to physically appear in that jurisdiction, provide your fingerprints. I mean, it really depends on what type of identity crime it was. But yes, it can be anywhere from a couple of hours to years. And most of the victims that I talk to that have very complex cases, or a very persistent thief that uses their information over and over and over, they liken their identity theft issue to more like a disease. And they talk about it going into remission. So it's quiet for a while, but they know that it's looming in the background, and they have to do these health checks, and they know it can pop up at any time again. And it does. And then they have to resolve whatever those issues are that are stemming from that latest round of credential misuse. Just circling back to what we talked about before, that it takes a lot less time to invest in these efforts, in the risk minimization efforts, than it does to remediate an identity theft or an identity crime case. Same principle applies for an employer. It actually takes a lot less time, money, and effort to invest at the beginning in these types of support programs and policies and infrastructure that support your employees than it does to fix something that's gone wrong.
I've learned so much by having the opportunity to work with you guys, and you have so many great resources on your website and all of those types of things. One of the new terms that you've taught me that I think is just a really important thing for everyone to become more aware of and more comfortable with is this idea of cyber hygiene. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about cyber hygiene and what people should be doing to make sure that they are maintaining best possible security?
Sure. And it's a really easy concept to understand, because we all understand, physical hygiene. And we understand that it's not just do this one thing. So if you went into your doctor's office and said, so doc, what do I have to do to maintain optimal health? Your doctor wouldn't give you one box to check. They wouldn't say, go brush your teeth and you're good. They'd give you a list of small practices, little things that you do on a regular basis. Wash your face, make sure you eat right, get enough sleep at night, exercise, de-stress when you can. So it's all of these little things that layered make a huge difference. And it's the exact same concept with cyber hygiene. And all of the best practices that we've been talking about, good password management, making sure that you're taking care of your devices and your computers, making sure you're patching and you have the antivirus, setting up two-factor authentication. I mean, the list it's a long list, but they're those little things that you can check off. And when you make that a practice, when you just make it part of your regular routine and absorb it into what you're doing on a daily basis, one, it becomes automatic. And two, again, you're layering all those little things on top of each other. And that, in the cybersecurity world, they always talk about that. It's not this one magic panacea that you can do and then you'll be fine. It's layers of security protections. And we as individuals have to practice good cyber hygiene and take a page out of industry's book and realize we have to do that as well.